tutorial we're going to be learning how to make one of these daisy hexagons from my Hexadaisy blanket. This blanket is available as a full written pattern that I'll link down in the description. That's in US and UK terms, but this tutorial is in US terminology. So let's get crocheting one of these hexagons. So to start our hexagon, we need to make a magic ring, and the method I prefer for this is the double magic ring because it's more secure for blankets. So I'm going to wrap my yarn around my first finger 3 times, and then I'm going to use my middle finger to pinch it with my first finger like this, and this stops that yarn from moving around. I've got my yarn tail dangling. So now I'm going to take my crochet hook, put it under those first 2 wraps of yarn and grab the third with my hook. And then pull that wrap of yarn under those 2 loops. And then going to gently remove the magic ring from my finger. So you can see now we've got a ring of 2 loops of yarn, and that's what we're going to be crocheting around for round 1. So we're going to start with a chain of 1. That doesn't count as a stitch, and then round 1 in the pattern is 6 single crochet into the magic ring. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to put my hook into the magic ring, yarn over, pull up a loop, then yarn over and pull through both loops. Then I'm going to repeat that single crochet into the magic ring until I have 6 single crochet total. So that's number 5 and then number 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now we're ready to close our magic ring, and we close the double magic ring a little bit differently to a normal magic ring. So give that yarn tail a gentle pull and watch those 2 strands of the magic yarn. Can you see one of them is moving and starting to tighten up? You need to grab that strand of yarn and pull it. And what that does is tightens the other strand of yarn first. And then when you pull that tail one last time, that gets rid of that loop we were just pulling on. You can see we've got a perfect centre for our daisy. So to finish off round 1, I'm going to slip stitch into the top of the first stitch. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there is my first stitch there. I'm going to put my hook under both of those loops of that first stitch. Doesn't want to focus, there you go, under both of the loops of that first stitch, and then I'm going to make a slip stitch and pull it a little bit tight. So that's round 1 finished. So now we're going to move on to round 2 of the Hexadaisy. So we're going to make a chain of 1. This does not count as the stitch. And the second round in the pattern is 2 single crochet into every stitch around, making a total of 12. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to work 2 single crochet into this first stitch. We're going under both of those loops of the stitch. I'm going to make 2 single crochet. And then in the next stitch I'm going to repeat this and make 2 more single crochet, and then the next one 2 more single crochet, and the next one 2 more single crochet. And I'm going to continue like this all the way around until I've made 12 single crochet, and that forms the centre of our daisy. So I think I've done 12 now. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So yeah, so I've done 12 stitches for the second round of my daisy. So now we've finished this daisy centre. So to finish off, I'm going to make a slip stitch into the top of that very first stitch we made just there. Just like that, and then I'm going to cut my yarn, leaving about, I think that's a bit more, I usually say at least 6 inches, I think that's a bit more than 6 inches, and then I'm going to use my hook to pull that yarn tail through, give that yarn tail a tug just to tighten that slip knot up. So that is round 2 of our daisy finished. So we're now going to move on to make the petals of the daisy in round 3. So I'm going to put my hook into a stitch that's approximately halfway round from where we finished off with our last yarn end there. And then I'm going to lay my white yarn for the petals over the top of my hook, just just like that. Then I'm going to pull a loop through that stitch out of nowhere from that bit of yarn. So now we're ready to start round 3. So round 3, we're going to make 12 cluster stitches to make each of the petals. Our first cluster is a little bit different because we've got a chain in there. So start with a chain of 3, and this counts as our first partial treble crochet. Then yarn over twice, so 1, 2, then put your hook into the same space as that starting chain. Yarn over and pull up a loop. Then yarn over and pull through 2. Yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So in the pattern, that's referred to as a beginning cluster because we've got that chain in there. Now chain 2, and we're going to make another cluster for another petal into the next stitch. So to make our clusters from this point forward, yarn over twice, put your hook into the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2, and now stop. We're not going to finish off that treble crochet. This is a partial treble crochet. We're going to leave those 2 loops on our hook, and we're not going to do that final yarn over and pull through. What we're going to do instead is we're going to start another treble crochet into the same stitch. So yarn over twice, then put your hook into the same stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2, and then yarn over, pull through 2 loops. So you can see now we've got 2 partial treble crochets and 3 loops on our hook. To finish off our cluster stitch, which makes the petal, yarn over and then pull through all 3 loops on your hook. So you can see how that draws those 2 stitches together to make that point of that petal there. So let's make another one together. So chain 2, yarn over twice, and then put your hook into the next stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2 loops, yarn over and pull through 2 loops. You've now got 2 loops on your hook. Yarn over twice, put your hook into the same stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Now to finish off our petal, we yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on our hook. So let's do one more of these petals together. So chain 2, and then we're going to make a 2 treble cluster into the next stitch, just like we've been doing. So yarn over twice, put your hook into the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. You've now got 2 loops on your hook. Yarn over twice, go back into the same stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2 loops, yarn over and pull through 2 loops. Then to finish off our cluster, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on your hook. And there we've got our first 4 petals. So repeat those steps all the way around, doing a chain of 2 and then a 2 treble crochet into each stitch, right the way until the last stitch, and you've got 12 petals total. And then I'll show you how we finish off at the end of this round. So I finished all 12 petals of my daisy, and I've done my last chain of 2. To finish off, I'm going to slip stitch into the top of this first cluster that we made. It doesn't really matter where you put your hook to do this slip stitch, but I prefer to go actually in the stitch just there, just because I think it looks just that little bit neater. And I'm going to make my finishing slip stitch. So I'm going to cut my yarn, leaving a tail for weaving in later, and then I'm going to take my hook and pull that tail through that slip stitch we just made, and then give that a pull just to tighten and fasten that off. So now we're ready to turn this daisy into a hexagon. So I've selected a contrast colour for the next 4 rounds of our hexagon, and then I'm going to pick any space in the daisy. It doesn't really matter where, I'm just going to go opposite to where my last yarn was, so it's easier to weave my ends in later. And then we're going to join our yarn just like we did in round 3. So I'm going to lay my yarn across the top of my hook, grab a loop and pull it through that space. In this round, we're not working into the petals, we're working into the spaces only. So to start our round, we're going to make a chain of 3. So as usual in crochet, that chain of 3 counts as our first double crochet. So 1, 2, 3, that's our starting chain done. And then we're going to add another double crochet into that same space. So I'm going to make my double crochet into that same space, just there. And then into the next space, I'm going to make 3 double crochet. So that's 1, 2, 3. And then in the next space, we're going to make a corner group. So we're going to do 2 double crochet, then chain 2, and then 2 more double crochet back into the same space. And this creates the corner of our hexagon. And then we're going to repeat these 2 different groups all the way around. So I'm going to do 3 double crochet and then a corner group, then 3 double crochet, then a corner group, and keep repeating all the way around. So let's work 3 double crochet into the next space. And that's my 3rd double crochet. And then I'm going to work 2 double crochet into this space. And then I'm going to chain 2. And I'm going to work 2 more double crochet into that same space. So you can see how this is starting to form our hexagon, and here are the 2 corners of our hexagon. So you need to repeat those steps all the way around, and then I'll meet you back at this corner with your 6-sided hexagon. I'm going to show you how to transition up into the next round of the hexagon. So here I am at the end of the round 4, and you can see that this is starting to look like a hexagon now. To finish off that last corner, I'm going to make 2 more double crochet into that same corner space that we started in. And then I make my corners a little bit differently in my granny squares and my hexagons, and it did confuse a few people who were joining in the crochet along. So I'll try and explain how I do this as we go. So usually in the corners we've got 2 chains, and that creates those points for the corners. But in this last corner, what I'm going to do is I'm going to chain just 1, and then I'm going to single crochet into the top of that starting chain. So that space there, I'm going to make a single crochet, and that single crochet counts as our 2nd chain. So we're going to pretend that single crochet is actually a chain stitch. And what this does is it means that we start every round in the very corner, and it hides that starting chain in the corner so it's less noticeable. And to make this first corner a little bit neater, we're actually going to work this first corner differently to the other 5 corners in round 5. So to start round 5, chain 3, and that counts as our first double crochet. We're now going to make another double crochet around that single crochet into that chain 2 space. So if we look here, that single crochet we're pretending is the 2nd chain of our corner. So I'm putting my hook into that space there. I'm going to make a double crochet around that single crochet to hide it a little bit. And then we're going to skip our starting chain. So what we've done in this corner is, rather than making a double crochet into that starting chain, we've done it instead into this chain space, just to make this corner that bit neater. You don't have to do this my way, you can do it any other way you like. As long as your stitch count is right, the rest of the pattern will work. So we're going to continue on with round 5. So make a double crochet into the 2nd stitch. So we're going to skip that starting chain and we're going to make a double crochet into that 2nd stitch there. And then we're going to make a double crochet into every stitch until the next corner space. Okay, I'm now at the next corner space here. So in each corner we're going to work 1 double crochet, and then we're going to chain 2, and then work another double crochet into that corner space, and that creates that corner. So if you look at the first corner that we didn't work that starting chain, but we actually did 2 double crochet into that corner space. That's to make this corner look neater. But for every other corner, we are going to work that first stitch. And I do indicate on a labelled photo in the pattern which stitches you're skipping and which ones you're not. So we are not skipping this stitch. However, sometimes that stitch there can actually hide the top of that stitch. So let me bring that a bit closer so I can explain. So when we're working into a space with that stitch, sometimes that stitch can mask the top of that stitch. That stitch is hidden there. So you might have to pull that stitch over to find that hidden stitch there. But you need to work a double crochet into every stitch along this side. Okay, I've worked 1 double crochet into every stitch along this side of the hexagon. And then in this corner space here, I'm going to work a double crochet, chain 2, and then a double crochet. And you're going to repeat this step all the way around until we get back to this corner, and then I'll show you how we finish off this corner and transition into the next round, because this is round 5 we're working now, but round 6 and 7 are worked in exactly the same way. So here I am at the end of end of round 5. I forgot what round I was on for a second there. So we're at the end of round 5 and I've just got this last corner to complete, and we're going to do it exactly the same as the previous round. So we're going to chain 1, we're going to do a single crochet into the top of that starting chain, then chain 3, that counts as our first double crochet, and then we do a double crochet into that chain space around that single crochet that we're pretending is a chain. So I can show you a bit now what that corner is going to look like. So you can see that double crochet around the single crochet there, and how our chain is neatly tucked into the corner, and it's a lot less noticeable than if it was, say, running up here. And what we're going to do for round 6 and round 7 is repeat exactly what we did in round 5. Yes, round 5, I'm losing my row counts again. So we're going to work a double crochet, we're going to skip that starting chain, work a double crochet in every stitch along that side. In the corner we do a double crochet, chain 2, a double crochet, and then we work a double crochet into every stitch, not skipping that first stitch. We only skip the first stitch in this corner. And you're going to repeat that for 2 more rounds for round 6 and 7. And then meet me back here and I will show you round 8, because round 8 I'm going to show you how to do an invisible join, and we're going to leave a long tail to sew our hexagons together. So I'm at the end of round 7 and I'm going to chain 2 and then slip stitch into the top of that starting chain just there, and then cut my yarn and pull that yarn tail through that chain we just made, or slip stitch, not chain, sorry, and then give that yarn a little tug to tighten. And that is rounds 1 to 7 of the Hexadaisy. We're now going to add round 8 on, and I'm going to show you how I do the invisible join with single crochet. So I'm going to take any corner of my hexagon and put my hook into that corner space. Then I'm going to lay my white yarn across my hook when I find the end. There's the end. I'm going to lay the white yarn across the hook. I'm going to pull a loop through that chain 2 space. Okay, and now we're ready to start round 8. So round 8 we're going to be starting in the corner again, and we're going to chain 1. So usually in single crochet that first chain doesn't count as a stitch, but with the invisible join it does count as a stitch. So that is our first single crochet. We're going to do 1 more single crochet into that corner space, and then we're going to work 1 single crochet into every stitch along the side of the hexagon until we get to this chain 2 space. So I'm just going to speed this up for you, and I will meet you at that corner once I've worked 1 single crochet into every stitch. So here I am at the next corner. I've worked 1 single crochet into every stitch along, and our next stitch is this chain 2 corner. So you need to work 3 single crochets into that chain 2 space. And then if you're a beginner, I would recommend putting a stitch mark in the corner stitch. The corner stitch of this round is the second stitch of that 3 single crochet group. So you'd put a stitch marker in that stitch there to indicate your corner, and this will help you a lot when you come to sewing your squares together. Not squares, hexagons. Okay, let's continue on with the round. So be careful of that hidden stitch in this corner. Again, you might have to pull your single crochets over, and then you're going to repeat those steps all the way around, working 1 single crochet into every stitch and then 3 single crochets into each chain 2 corner. So do that all the way around, and then I'll meet you back here and we will finish off with an invisible join. So here I am at the end of my row, and I just need to make 1 more single crochet into that corner space there, and my row is finished. But I'm not going to slip stitch to join. That's because I'm going to be doing an invisible join to cover this gap. You could slip stitch if you want to, but I think you get a much better finish with an invisible join, and I find it a lot easier to sew those hexagons together when they have an invisible join. So you need to cut your yarn tail to about 12 inches or 30 centimeters. That's because we're going to be using this yarn tail to sew our hexagons together into strips, so it needs to be this long. So once you've cut your yarn tail, use your hook to pull that yarn tail through that stitch we just made in that corner space. Now thread that yarn tail onto a needle. So I've got my yarn threaded on a needle, and then we're going to do an invisible join across this gap because we've got our first chain here, and we're going to turn that chain into a single crochet with the invisible join. So to do this, take your yarn needle and put it under both of the loops at the top of that first single crochet stitch to the left side, or if you're watching the left-handed version, the right side, so to one side of the starting chain, and pull it through. And you don't want to pull too loose or too tight. You want this length of yarn here to be approximately the same length as the length of the front loop of the stitches either side of it, just to make it blend in. And then you're going to put your yarn needle through the back of that stitch to the other side of the starting chain and pull that through with a similar tension there. So what I did next is I just left this yarn tail until I came to sewing my hexagons together. But I know some people get concerned that that invisible join is going to come loose. So what you can do is you can put your needle through a loop at the back of the stitch and tie a sort of knot just to keep it stable if you prefer. I did not do this because I found the tension of my joining stitches enough to keep that invisible join closed, but if you want that extra security, just tie a little knot on the back. Weave in all of your ends apart from this long one, and we will save that until we sew our hexagons together. So that is our Hexadaisy finished. The next step is to do a half hexagon, and once the tutorial for that's uploaded, I will stick it on your screen now. And don't forget, you can get the full pattern for the blanket via the link down in the description. Happy hooking!